Hello YouTube. I thought it was about time I made good on a promise I made to make a video on my sins. So here we go. Lust. Lust is a sin I'm guilty of. I certainly have appreciation for the beauty of women, and I can't pretend that I'm a chaste and pure person anymore, and I really wouldn't want to. Not in a boastful fashion, but the experience of love and of loving other people is not a bad thing. I reject the idea that lust is a sin. Lust could be done in sinful ways, but if you're honest about your emotions, if you are true to to the other person as well, then there's no shame in it, and there never should be. The idea of the love between two people being a shameful thing in the eyes of anything is wrong in my opinion. So I reject the idea of lust as a sin. Gluttony. Gluttony is a sin I'm guilty of. I like food. I like food a lot. I like my food, I like my drink. I'm probably guilty of gluttony. Except I'm not wasteful with my food. Even if I don't eat it that day, because I'm known to have eyes bigger than my belly. It goes in my fridge, gets eaten up. If the worst comes to worst, it goes into a leftover pie. Greens go into the composter eventually. Fertilise my garden so I can grow some more food. Gluttony isn't a sin against God, but against man. In a world where people starve to waste food, that's a sin. But it's not a sin because it's not against God. It's a crime because it's against your fellow man. I reject the idea of gluttony as a sin. Greed. I'm guilty of greed. I certainly have been. Taking what's not mine and more than my fair share because I wanted it. But I think everyone's greedy at some point. The important thing is to learn from your greed and not let it claim you. Is greed a sin? No. Greed isn't a sin against anything, except people you take from wrongly. When you take what's not yours, that's a crime, but it's not a sin. I reject the idea of greed as a sin, because if you want more, you can want to give more as well. There can be more than just greed for material things. There can be greed for happiness, greed for love, greed for friends, greed for good in the world. And not in the Thatcherite vein of it, but wanting to create more and more good in the world. And that wouldn't be a sin, even though it'd be greed. I reject the idea of greed as a sin. Sloth is a sin I'm guilty of, certainly. I am the master of procrastinating, which is why I'm actually up at this time of night making this video. It's now about 5:30 in the morning, and I've been working all night on a project because I should have done it earlier. Sloth is definitely a sin, but it's not a sin against God. It's a theft from yourself, a waste of your own time and your own precious life. So I reject the idea of a sin as sloth. It's merely a crime against yourself, a wrongdoing, in that you take your own time and waste it. As my teachers used to say, it's your own time you're wasting. I reject the idea of sloth as a sin. Wrath is a sin I'm guilty of. There have been times I've really flipped my lid, really seen red, literally, and really lost it. I'm not proud of those times. Those times aren't good. I still haven't. But wrath is a sin? No. Wrath isn't a sin. Wrath is a human emotion. If you do things that are criminal during your wrath, you can't be forgiven for that. The experience of it, the humanness of it, that's not wrong. If you feel anger, if you let yourself feel anger, as Got That Funk would say, a man I greatly admire, you lose control. But if you can restrain your wrath and keep control and still feel it, you can channel that anger into useful things, useful work, useful energy. Wrath can be your servant. Wrath is not a sin. Envy. Envy is a sin I'm guilty of. Other people for having things I'd like. other people for being better off than I am, smarter than I am, prettier than I am, just more fulfilled than I am. I'm envious of them. But is envy a sin? I reject the idea of envy being a sin. Envy isn't a sin against any sort of God, because envy drives you to become better. If you're envious, you want what they've got, and you won't stop until you've got it. You'll work hard, you'll strive, and you'll achieve, if you're really envious. Envy isn't a sin. Pride is a sin I'm guilty of. I'm proud of a lot of things. Proud of my family, I'm proud of my history. I'm not proud of everything I've done, but I'm proud of quite a few things. They say pride comes before a fall, and needless pride, pride undeserved, that can lead to arrogance, and that might be a sin. But on the other hand, pride isn't a sin against God. Pride is a foolish thing you do yourself if you're too proud. But if you have no pride, if you have no self-respect, if you are nothing but humility, I don't feel you've achieved much, and I don't think you will achieve much, because the sense of pride and of wanting to be proud drives me, drives a lot of people in this world. Pride isn't a sin. And so you see, in these 7 deadly sins, I don't see sins at all. There are wrong things in them, certainly, but all of them are intrinsic parts of being human, and being human isn't a sin, because there isn't a God to sin against. The things you do to yourself, you do to yourself. The things you do to others can be crimes or beneficial, but they stand and fall on their own merits, not on whether or not they're against some god's ideals. Thanks, YouTube.